Good morning, students. In previous class, we learned a circulatory system and the parts of circulatory system and heart and blood vessels and the components of blood. Today, we learn about excretion in human excretory system and human excretory system. Then normally, excretion is nothing but the process of removal of nitrogenous waste. In this lesson, we learn the importance of excretory process and the excretory system in human and how excretory system works in human and the important functions of kidney and describe the process of dialysis and plants also excrete. Then excretion process in plants. And normally during digestion process, we eat various amount of food materials, various types of food materials. During digestion process, and all the complex food materials into simpler form. Then the carbohydrate it's converted into glucose. Then after digestion process, the nitrogen waste are created. During digestion or excretion, the nitrogenous waste is excreted. The removal of nitrogenous waste from the body is known as excretion. And the various organisms use various strategies for their excretion. Like amoeba use pseudopodia for capturing food and remove their waste or excrete their nitrogenous waste through diffusion process. And the simple organisms like flatworm, planaria use simple strategies for excrete their waste. Plants also excrete their waste in the form of water vapor, carbon dioxide through stomata. Then human beings, highly developed organism, use various strategies for their excretion. Normally human also release their waste in the form of salt and water through the skin. And human beings, the main nitrogenous waste are urea. And first, we study the human excretory system. Human contain a pair of kidneys, pair of ureters, and urinary bladder, and the urethra. That is the urinary system or excretory system in human beings. And the kidney is located in both the sides of vertebral column in the abdomen region. So the backbone normally present, and the both sides of the backbone and the kidney are present. Then the kidney contain two kidneys are present, and the two ureters, and the urinary bladder, and the urethra. So normally kidney receives the waste materials like water, salt and other substances through the blood and excrete their waste, remove the nitrogenous waste in the kidney, and the waste is released in the form of urine, and the urine is released out or passes out of the body. Okay. Then and we study the inside the kidney. The kidney contains the medulla region in the inner part and the cortex region in outer. The cortex region is nothing but outer part of the kidney, and the medulla region is nothing but the inner part of the kidney. And the pelvis part is inner to the medulla, and the nephrons, the important organelle and the important structure present in the kidney, that is nephron. Nephron is actually millions of nephrons are present in each kidney. Actually, nephron only filters their nitrogenous waste. The structure of nephron is seen. The renal capsules are present, and Bowman's capsules are present, and glomerulus, that is nothing but blood vessels which receives the waste from the body, and the glomerulus is a filtration unit, and the Bowman's capsule, the total capsules which surrounds the glomerulus, it filters the nitrogenous waste. And the blood is entered into the glomerulus, the waste is filtered, and the waste is entered into the proximal convoluted tubule. That is the first part of the nephron, and the Henle's loop, and the second part of the nephron, and the loop of Henle, and the third part is distal convoluted tubule, and lastly is collected in the collecting duct. The first kidney is filtering the urine, and the proximal convoluted tubule, distal, and the last one. Then the urine is collected through the ureters and stored in urinary bladder and is released through the urethra. Normally 10 to 12 inches of ureters are present in the human beings. Then the urinary bladder fills, and the sphincter muscles present in the urinary bladder, and the entry of urinary bladder, and the sphincter muscles closes, and afterwards urinary bladder fills the kidney, and the urinary bladder releases the urine through the urethra, and in male through the urethra, and female also through the urethra. And the movement, first the urine enter into the blood enter into the glomerulus, then the proximal convoluted tubule, urine, and the loop of Henle, and the distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting duct. This is the pathway of movement of urine in the human beings. And lastly through the urethra, and the urine is excreted outside the body. And normally nutrients also is entered into the kidney. And nitrogenous waste like urea, uric acid, hydrogen, potassium, salt also enter into the kidney. And after entry, and the nephrons filters these waste materials from the blood Nephron filters these waste materials from the blood and excrete the urine and separate the urine from the blood. After filtration, the urine is excreted. This process is ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption, and after entry of blood into the glomerulus, then ultrafiltration process taking place. During ultrafiltration process, the blood materials and the waste materials like glucose, amino acids, salts are entered into the proximal convoluted tubule. Even glucose is useful substance, amino acid also useful, but the glucose and amino acid also enter into the proximal convoluted tubule. During movement, the loop of Henle reabsorbs the useful substances like glucose and the water, and the waste materials are not reabsorbed and entered into the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. Then the urine flows into the ureter and the urinary bladder, and through the urethra is excreted. And the urinary bladder fills, the urine is excreted outside the body. In child and adult, the urinary bladder size is different. In adult, it is 80 millimeters size in urinary bladder. In the child, this is smaller. So only child normally excretes more as compared to the adult. So initially, 180 liters of waste materials, blood is entered into the kidney, but afterwards, after filtration, only 1 liter or 2 liters of urine are excreted in the urethra. Remaining waste materials, remaining useful substances are reabsorbed. Some persons, due to kidney defects, stones, renal calculi, various disorders which accumulate in the human kidney, that is poisonous waste, is accumulated in the human kidney. The process of removing the waste in artificially, the process is dialysis. The machine is dialyzer. During dialysis process, the human blood is entered into the machine like filtration tubes, which filters the nitrogenous waste. First, the renal artery, from the artery, the semi-permeable membrane of the dialyzer machine receives the blood, and the dialyzer machine which filters their waste materials, and the useful and the filtered blood again enter into the human beings. The process is dialysis. Dialysis is nothing but the process of removing nitrogenous waste artificially in the kidney affected person. Okay. And the filtered blood is entered into the normal vein in the human beings. So plants also excrete, like human. Plants also excrete their, plants absorb water and minerals from the soil. And after absorption, the waste materials are excreted. Waste materials are excreted through the respiration, even carbon dioxide, even oxygen also a waste materials in plants. And plant cells also excrete their waste in the form of some oxalate salt in the vacuoles in the cell. And waste leaves and gums and resins also waste product of plants. The waste are stored in the bark of the tree, and the waste materials are stored. In this lesson, we deals about excretory system in human being. And again, I give a small brief idea about this topic. First, what is in the excretion? Excretion is nothing but the process of removal of nitrogenous waste from the body in the form of urea, or maybe some organisms uric acid and some organisms ammonia. According to their waste materials, the organisms are classified into ammoniotelic organisms, ureotelic organisms, and the uricotelic organisms. Normally, human beings under the ureotelic organisms, human beings release their waste in the form of urea plus water is urine. The human contain excretory system like a pair of kidney and the pair of ureter and the urinary bladder and urethra. The kidney contain millions of nephrons. The nephron actually excretory unit in the human. Mainly nephron only excrete their waste materials. First, kidney receives the waste materials through the blood vessel, that is renal artery, and after receiving the kidney receives the blood and they enter into the nephron. Nephron, in first part of the nephron, Bowman's capsule, which contain glomerulus, filters their waste materials, and the waste and some useful substances like glucose and amino acid also enter into the first part of the nephron, that is proximal convoluted tubule. And the next step, and the waste materials are entered into the loop of Henle, and loop of Henle and the proximal convoluted tubule, some useful substances are reabsorbed. Then the waste materials like urea and water is entered into the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. After enter into the collecting duct, the urine enter into the ureter, and the ureter to urinary bladder, and the urinary bladder to urethra. And the urine moves first the kidney and the ureters and the urinary bladder and urethra to the outside. The nephron is the main important unit which is useful for the excretion in human being. Plants also excrete. Plants also excrete in the form of waste materials, in the form of CO2, even oxygen, and gums and resins stored in the old bark of the tree, and the cellular vacuoles. Even vacuole also stores their waste materials. Okay. This is excretion in human beings as well as in plants. So study from your NCERT book and practice your NCERT drawing. I give a worksheet also. After studying your NCERT book and understand the concepts, then answers to the worksheets. Thank you.